Tonight, we're also keeping an eye on a proposed law that would let adoption agencies refuse to place a child in a home because of the family's religious beliefs. Activists are upset. They say it would let agencies discriminate against same-sex couples or people whose religious views just don't match the majority. Cole Sullivan spoke to the lawmaker behind the bill and the people who don't want it to pass. Cole?
Daniel, both the lawmakers and activists say this bill would allow discrimination. They just disagree on whether that's a good thing or not.
When Oak Ridge Representative John Reagan woke up this morning, he had about 75 emails waiting.
This particular one here is particularly upset.
Upset over a law he's proposed. It would allow organizations to refuse adoption rights to potential parents if it goes against the organization's religious beliefs.
Adoption to me is far too important.
The bill has made national headlines because activists say it would allow discrimination, specifically against same-sex couples.
These are loving families. They are trying to do the best they can to adopt kids who need loving families.
Sterling Field is the Knox County chair of the Tennessee Equality Project. He says the bill doesn't just hurt gay people, it could prevent people who follow different faiths or believe in no God at all from adopting a child.
Simply adding another hurdle to these kids getting loving, stable homes is just another problem.
Representative Reagan says it won't prevent kids from being adopted.
I have to disagree with that.
But will keep religious-based adoption agencies working in the state.
It makes sense for the state to say, we will protect your religious freedom and let you continue to do this.
Constitutionally, an expert says the law will probably pass muster.
The court has shown a great deal of willingness to protect religious freedom in the recent past, even perhaps to the exclusion of equality.
Reagan doesn't disagree. This law would allow discrimination, which he says is not a bad thing.
Well, quite obviously, the religious beliefs of certain organizations are inherently discriminatory.
Representative Reagan has also filed bills that would limit abortions in the state and criminalize transgender people using bathrooms and locker rooms of their gender identity. These bills are still in the early stages and some of them have just been referred to committee. You can read more about those proposed laws and all the new bills on our producer Annie's Bill blog on WBIR.com. Daniel?
It's a good resource there. Cole, thank you.